In the Texarkana area lies the small city of Fouke, though I call it a city with an asterisk. The area has a population of 800 people and is a whopping 1.36 square miles in total. Though perhaps its small size and population is what makes it the perfect location for a monster. Throughout the years, Fouke and nearby towns have played host to a massive creature of hulking muscle, claws, and fur that isn't afraid to get up close and personal with its neighbors. Get ready as we dive into the horror that is the Fouke monster. Hello everyone and welcome to Wicked Encounters, where we explore just what goes bump in the night. I'm your host Allie, and today we're going to cover the Boggy Creek Monster, otherwise known as the Fouke Monster, Swamp Stalker of Boggy Creek, Southern Sasquatch, or its original name, the Jonesville Monster. The Fouke Monster is described as being similar to a Bigfoot in appearance as a human-like ape creature, standing between 7 and 8 feet tall, though some reports have it going up to 10 feet tall and weighing close to 300 pounds. It has long arms, including its chest and legs all being covered in thick, dark hair, with bright red eyes and 3 toes on each foot that measure 17 inches long and 7 inches wide, which it uses to walk with a shuffling gait or run in a hunched posture while swinging its long arms similar to a primate. If it sounds like this thing could body you in a heartbeat, don't worry, it can. Even better, it's not friendly at all and has a smell that would make you want to die. Described as a stench combination of a skunk and wet dog, it's one of the smelliest cryptids I've covered so far. And while I can handle wet dog smell from having 4 of the monsters, skunk? Yeah, no, that's enough to make me fear for my life of getting sprayed, never mind getting pulverized by a massive man-ape. Sightings for the Fouke Monster go back as far as the 1800s, with people in Arkansas reporting sightings of a large, hairy, wild man who was just roaming around. These sightings made it into the local paper, with one in 1851 being put in the Memphis Inquirer, and another in 1856 through the Caddo Gazette. The 1900s, though, is when they started becoming a more frequent occurrence, with sightings back in 1946 finally giving it its first name of the Jonesville Monster, where it was most commonly spotted by the locals in the area who didn't report it until much later. Fuck off! Once it began getting more traction, as a fairly common occurrence as far as monster sightings go. In 1955, it was supposedly spotted by a 14-year-old boy who described it as having reddish-brown hair and having stopped to sniff the air. The boy fired upon it with a bird shot, which, maybe don't next time, since it wasn't charging or even looking at you. And the pellets did absolutely nothing. Imagine if it pissed it off. Kid probably wouldn't have made it to his 15th birthday party. There were a few sightings throughout the 1960s, but it wasn't until the beginning of the 1970s when Jonesville Monster would become known as the Fouke Monster and begin making national headlines. On May 2nd, 1971, Elizabeth Ford was napping on her couch as her husband was on a hunting trip with his brother and friends. While she slept, a creature had skulked up to the house and, what can only be assumed as feeling bold, ripped one of its massive arms through a screen window. A flurry of hair and claws, with the only sound being its heavy breathing. Fortunately, before the thing could get in, Elizabeth's husband, Bobby Ford, along with his brother and friend, were returning from their hunt when they spotted the creature. They fired upon the intruder a few times with their shotgun and rifles, enough to make it run off and give them time to make it inside to check on Elizabeth and the other women who had been in the house during the incident. It seemed they scared the creature off. For now, at least. The group had thought they had heard rustling around the house previously and had felt watched. Having only been in the house a few days, though, they had chalked it up to being unfamiliar with the place and just needing some time to get used to it. Never would they have imagined that the entire time they were being stalked by a creature who had been in the area for over a century, and it wasn't happy at being shot at in the middle of its fun. Around midnight, the monster returned with vengeance. The men had spotted it from the porch, having been on watch since the initial attack, and shot at it again. They believed they had struck it and saw it fall, so they went to investigate. Before they could get a better look, though, they heard screaming coming from the house, prompting Bobby to return to see what was happening. As he was getting up onto the porch, a massive hairy arm grabbed his shoulder and flung him to the ground. Bobby was able to scurry away and run into the house. Perhaps now having two sides to contend with, the massive beast fled into the fields faster than any of them expected, in a hunched bipedal motion. The group called the Fouke Constable Ernest Walraven at 12:35, who thoroughly searched the area from the surrounding fields and woods for around an hour without finding anything. He gave the group his shotgun and flashlight before returning home, but a little while later the group called him back saying they'd shot at it again, prompting him to stay until 5 in the morning. Bobby Ford was treated at St. Michael Hospital for minor scratches and mild shock before being released the same day. With the new day came daylight, prompting the group to look around to find what exactly it could have been that had attacked them. The wall that remained was several strange tracks with only 3 toes, scratch marks on the front porch with several pieces of tin nails around the bottom of the house having been ripped away, and another damaged window. Surprisingly, despite thinking that they had hit the creature and seen it go down, there was no blood to be found anywhere. Jim Powell of the Texarkana Gazette and Texarkana Daily News had written the first story on the monster. While it didn't make the front page, his headline, "Hairy Monster Hunted in Fouke Sector," did get a good bit of attention, as people read about the ordeal the Fords had the previous night. Walraven had been interviewed as well and had mentioned how several residents of the Jonesville community, which is located near Fouke, had reported seeing a hairy monster who they'd shoot at without even getting a glance from the beast. The very next day, both the Texarkana Gazette and Texarkana Daily News had a follow-up story. The headline? "Monster may be a mountain lion." Don Ford, Bobby's brother, was quoted as saying, "We think now it might have been a big cat like a mountain lion or puma." He had been watching people wander through his fields looking for traces of the Fouke monster. Around 100 people to be specific. Looking under their porch and around the area, making it impossible for the family to have a normal life. Personally, I think Don just wanted some sleep and for people to go away. I mean, that's what I would do. No, never mind, nothing happened. Go away and leave me alone. Stop asking questions. I want to take a shower without people knocking on the window to ask me questions. Begone. Fortunately, the Fords would get some reprieve, as less than 3 weeks later, another sighting was reported. This time by Mr. and Mrs. D.C. Woods Jr. and Mrs. R.H. Sedgis, who were returning home when they saw the monster crossing the highway in front of their car. Running hunched over, swinging its arms as it went, the trio were flabbergasted with what they had just witnessed. Soon after, more and more people began reporting their own sightings of this large, hairy, monkey-ape naked man creature, along with the strange noises it brought with it. Tracks were reportedly found in one area, prompting the sheriff to investigate along with several deputies. They tried to get dogs onto the trail of the creature, but the area was too hot and the woods too dry to hold a scent for them to follow. The sheriff said that another attempt would be made if the weather cools off and it rains, so that the dogs would be able to follow the scent if the ground holds some moisture, but did at least say that whatever the creature is, it's harmless, unless cornered. I beg to differ, but considering he continued to say he didn't want anyone shooting at it, I feel it was more of a way to keep people from blindly shooting at anything they saw thinking it was the beast, similar to what the residents in Enfield did with the Enfield Horror. All in all, there were over 40 sightings of the creature in the 1970s alone, and it had been claimed to have been spotted as recently as 2023, with a hunter observing a dark, ape-like creature from a deer stand. Some people believe that the creature was nocturnal, but over the years, quite a few sightings during the day have been reported, such as 2 in 2021 reported by a researcher claimed to have seen it moving through the woods by Mercer Bayou, and the other having seen it run across a country road. Fucking yeah! Both reported seeing it have reddish-colored hair, and some have said it looks like a really tall orangutan because of this. Now, orangutans aren't exactly common in Arkansas, nor do they grow to over 7 feet tall. So, what could it have been? Well, according to archaeologist Frank Schambach, there is a 99% chance the tracks are a hoax. All primates have 5 toes, and this big boy, or girl, I ain't gonna assume, has only been reported as having 3. A major evolutionary drawback that, for a creature so big, would make it very difficult to balance its weight distribution and would make it fall in an entirely different evolutionary line. You see, all land vertebrates descend from a common ancestor that had 4 legs and 5 toes, or digits if you're going to be a science snob and go, actually, on me. Either way, a beastie described as human or ape-like would naturally have 5 tootsies and 5 fingies unless it was born with defects or had an accident on both feet. The biggest theory is that it's a constantly misidentified black bear, though many people are confused as to how quickly it can move when running upright, since black bear don't do that. And the idea that it's a big cat is just absurd to me. Like, you got me with black bear, you immediately lose me with a big cat. Big cats are big for cats. Don't get me wrong, I will die if you put me up against a cougar, but they stand at a grand 24 to 35 inches, which is nowhere near how tall the Fouke monster is. They can be up to 8 feet long, but their size is dependent on their location near either the poles, equaling naturally larger, or the equator, making them smaller. This is why a male mountain lion on average weighs between 115 and 220 pounds, and a female between 64 and 141 pounds. That's a huge fluctuation in weight, all of which are still going to kill me very easily. But in Arkansas, a 7 to 8 foot long cat is gigantic, but also take into consideration that a third of that size is in their tail, and the Fouke monster has never been reported as having a tail, or being thin. It's a thick boy. Or girl. Once again, not assuming. For black bears, they do come in a variety of colors despite their name, with some being brown, rusty cinnamon, blue-gray, or even fully white. Black bears typically are 3 feet tall at their shoulder, though they can be a bit over 6 feet in length. They're also able to stand straight up, though they can't run that way, immediately dropping to all fours when running, but they are fast. You will not outrun a bear. Black, grizzly, polar, you're fucked. Average speed of a black bear, 30 miles per hour. Average sprint of a human, 12 to 15 miles per hour. Average speed of me, 5 miles per hour. We are all going to get mowed down in a race against a bear. You will just live because I will be getting eaten first. You don't need to be faster than the bear, you just need to be faster than me. A sad fact I've come to terms with. It's hard to say what the Fouke monster could be, but while its tale was starting to die down, its encounter with the Fords drew the attention of filmmaker Charles B. Pierce, who in 1972 released the docudrama The Legend of Boggy Creek. The film retells stories of locals and folk in Boggy Creek with some dramatizations. Upon its release, skeptics began noticing an interesting trend. Lyle Blackburn, the writer of The Beast of Boggy Creek, combed through years of newspaper archives to find mentionings of the Fouke monster. While he obtained a plethora of stories and secondhand accounts going back into the 1960s, Powell's report of the Ford incident in 1971 was the earliest print record he was able to find, with future articles coming out with people having potentially come forward with their own stories, remembering their own harrowing ordeals, or maybe making them up. Costing $160,000 to make, The Legend of Boggy Creek grossed $20 million in the box office. It did so well that it prompted another filmmaker to release Return to Boggy Creek in 1977, and Charles Pierce returned with another movie as a sequel to his original film, Boggy Creek 2, Boggy Creek 2, and the legend continues. I didn't make that one up, that is its title. It didn't do nearly as well, being featured on Mystery Science Theater 3000 in 1999, with performer and writer Bill Corbett having the following to say about it. It's the kind of movie that seems to hate you, to wish you active harm, to kick sand in your eyes and make you cry. And for me, this was personified by Mr. Charles B. Pierce, who is apparently responsible for every single aspect, every single nanosecond of this cruel and unusual bit of celluloid. He chose to write and play a grim, hostile, condescending know-it-all of a man, a character who is proven superior to everyone else in the story again and again, who drills his lousy, stinking voiceover narrative into our heads every freaking minute of this film, and who then has the temerity to wrap his movie up, suggesting his sour Nazi of a character is really an ecological servant of God.
Emotional damage.
I read that entire quote because I have never read such a thorough burn for a movie before and wanted to share that with you in case you were interested in watching it. Now, despite the bad follow-ups, the original movie and the Fouke monster have done wonders for the economy of the Fouke area, with visitors coming from all over to catch a glimpse of the Sasquatch-like stinky guy. He even has his own festival called the Fouke Monster Festival that was previously known as the Boggy Creek Festival until 2013. An annual event dedicated to the monster and its ilk, with proceeds going to the Fouke School District, which I find commendable. But what do you think? Do you believe the Fords were attacked by a monster in 1971? Have you ever witnessed the Fouke monster or maybe another Sasquatch-like creature? What do you think it could be if not a monster? Let me know in the comments. I read them all for future video ideas and to see how many other people enjoy learning about spooky stuff like myself. If you want to see what I release in the future, consider subscribing, liking this video, clicking the bell, and sharing it with others. Many of my videos are thanks to suggestions given to me, so feel free to let me know what you'd like to see covered next time. Finally, I'd like to give a big thank you to my patrons. Your support means the world to me, along with you, the viewer. With that, I'm Allie, this is Wicked Encounters, and I'll see you next time. Bye!